Now I can go. Thanks, Glenn. All right, Cherie Johnson, recovered alcoholic. Happy and grateful to be here. Thank you for asking me. I just looked up my days, 21,738 days, which translates into, according to this thing, 59 years, 5 months, and something. June 6, 1965 is my last drink day. Last drunk day was, well, not necessarily. Last drunk month was in February of 65. And I met, fell in love with, and moved in with boy on AA campus. 4 months later, he didn't do what I wanted him to do. So I thought I'd get drunk at him, to get attention. I didn't get drunk, but I did have some drinks. So, June 6th is my sobriety date. Today is Gratitude Wednesday. Happy Gratitude Wednesday. The reason I say that is many years ago, longer than I've been here in California for sure. I was in Hawaii and somebody there came to the meeting, my home group, and said, I'm really tired of this hump day thing. Every time Wednesday comes around, it's hump day, like now you've gone up the hill, now you got to go down. I've decided to make Wednesdays Gratitude Wednesday. And I thought, my God, what a great idea. And so I have carried that on in my life ever since then. I cannot tell you when, but I can tell you that it's been over 25, 30 years. So every Wednesday is Gratitude Wednesday. Does not mean that I'm not grateful the rest of the week, but it does mean that when Wednesday comes around, I can look at it and go, okay, what consciously am I grateful for today? So I like having Gratitude Wednesday much better than I liked having Hump Day. It would take longer than I have to share all my experience, strength, and hope. So I will share some bits and pieces and hope that it helps someone along with their sobriety. And welcome, Nina. I hope you hear something. I know some things may not make any sense, but keep coming back. It will eventually. Everything is a gift. My past, my present, my drinking, my sobriety. I see that it's all been necessary to get me to where I am today. And I know that I'm supposed to be where I am today because I can't imagine my life without Alcoholics Anonymous in it. Tradition 3 for me is what I'm going to say saved my life in a sense. It's my savior. I could be tall, short. I could be a male or female. I could drink gallons or glasses or cans. I could drink beer, which I did. I was a beer drinker. Wine, hard liquor. There is nothing in the traditions which govern Alcoholics Anonymous that say I have to drink a certain kind of booze or that I have to drink a long time. I didn't have any forms to fill out. I didn't have to answer any questions. It doesn't really matter what I drank or how often I drank or how long I drank. When I entered the program, what happened was I became involved in growing up because I certainly wasn't grown up when I got here. I was 18 years old. But Tradition 3 guarantees me that I only need to have a desire to stop drinking. And funny thing about it, it doesn't even say I have to. It just says I have to have a desire. And I can say, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous when I say so. And there was one thing, I was a teenage drunk. I was going to read something, but I'll think about that later. I was a teenage drunk, and I was never a social drinker. I don't think if anybody, I don't know that anybody ever asked me to have a drink. The people I drank with, it was always let's go get drunk, and we'd buy a case of beer or more. I bought slow gin when I could get it and drank it when I could, and it's just a sickening. It's a sickening sweet taste, and it tastes the same thing whether it's going down or coming up, and it always came up. My first drunk was at 14. I had, oh God, the mixture that I drank, I threw up at this party. And I had a couple of zombies. And for those of you who may not know what a zombie is, it's a mixture of everything. I have no idea what was in it, but I had two of them and drank that. And then I added to that, I think it was a whiskey sour, which was gin and orange juice, I think. And who knows? I mean, I blacked out as I usually did because I was a blackout drunk. And, I did this, I didn't drink that, but I drank to black out every time I drank. And every time I drank, I got drunk. I don't know, other than the last drink I had in June of 65, I always got drunk. And I remember what is he, my son-in-law asked me a couple of Christmases ago, did I ever have a drink with dinner? And I just looked at him like dumbfounded and went, why? Why would I want to drink with dinner, for heaven's sakes? My whole idea was to get drunk. I was not a social drinker. And having blackouts, half of my life is gone. I have no idea, not half of my life, but my drinking years, there was so much that I did that I don't remember. And there were some things that people told me that were not so nice, but it's what happens. So my drunkalog, if you want to call it that, is fairly dull. I had no jails, no institutions, no drunk driving, only because I wasn't caught. I was definitely a high bottom drunk, and the book talks about people like me. The bottom came up and hit me. I have a lot of yets. I was told that when I first got sober, and I have not experienced those yets. I hope never to experience those yets. And I have to tell you that it's easier to stay sober than to get sober. And that's one of the reasons why I keep hanging around AA, is because I don't want to have to get sober again. That was a lot of work. One of the things that did happen to me, I did get pregnant during my drinking days. I don't know who the father was because there was quite a few, but I had a baby boy, put him up for adoption, and my daughter, now the daughter I have now, is into genealogy and ancestry, and she managed to find this son of mine, and we have since reunited and reconnected. So you just never know what's going to happen. He was 58 years old when we reconnected. And that was a couple of years ago. So once I accepted in my innermost self, I was an alcoholic, or as the book says, I conceded to my innermost self. I completed step one. Now, there was a point in time during COVID, I was on some line and they wanted to know where step one was. Now, I've been reading the book for many years, and I kept getting it wrong. It's so funny. I could not find what they were talking about. So I called a friend of mine who only had 7 years in the program at the time, where step one was. And so she pointed it out to me in chapter 3. And of course, I've never forgotten it. There's some things that people say that you just never forget. And that was one of them. So now I know where step one is, and I have to concede to my innermost self. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Admitting it doesn't happen. Knowing it and knowledge-wise does not keep me sober. I have to get it down to the gut. And I think that getting drunk, or trying to get drunk at that guy that one time, is what did it. So I said there's a lot I could share. I'm going to hit on a few areas, things that have happened to me in the last few years. There is always growth. I want to say that. There's always growth. There's always more to learn. At least there should be. I'm never bored because I'm always learning new ideas, new ways of seeing the big book and the 12 and 12. I'll start out by touching on this God thing. When I came in, the God I had lived up in the sky. And I have no idea where I got the idea, but that's what he was. And he had the robe, and he had this little notebook, and he was taking notes on my actions. And of course, I always did bad things, and especially according to my grandmother. And so he was always writing down really bad things, and I did plenty of them. And the program tells me that I can have whatever God I want. And so I turned to the ocean as my higher power. And somewhere along the line, after putting the steps into living action and getting rid of some of that garbage I was carrying around from the past, I began digging into this relationship with God. I was about 5 years sober, and I decided I wanted to know more about God. So I found some spiritual teachers. I call them my spiritual teachers in book form. Um, I remember asking my sponsor one time how the sponsor I had at that time, how do I know what truth is? And she said, well, if you read something and it resonates with you, then it's truth for you. It doesn't mean that it's truth for everybody, but it's your truth. And that's how I found my spiritual, um, I'm going to say leaders, sponsors, whatever you want to call them. Um, yeah. So I was on this journey to know God. And these people, some of them were ministers, Eric Butterworth, Joel Goldsmith, Emmett Fox, even, I believe Bill read Emmett Fox. These were some of my teachers, and I was looking to them to find this God of my understanding. The big book tells me it's in my heart. And they basically said the same thing, that there really is no spot where God is not. But let me put it a little more simply as, if you look at the ocean and the waves, the wave is the ocean in wave form. And each wave kind of rolls out. Sometimes it slams to the shore. Sometimes it's very quiet and just kind of laps the shore. And then it rolls back into the back into the ocean. And every wave has the elements of the ocean in it. And for me, God is my ocean, and I'm God's wave. And every element of God is in me. And when I roll out into my day, sometimes I'm happy, joyous, and free, and sometimes not. But I'm always connected to God. Like the wave is always connected to the ocean. There is never a disconnection. And that's kind of how I saw God as I was coming into this program. And I say growing up because I was 18 and I have a sponsee that reminds me that I had a lot of growing up to do when I first got here. I didn't have it all together. I certainly didn't have it all together. And so today I'm never disconnected from my God. And it just, me and God are kind of one. There is no spot where God is not. And for me today, God is everything and everywhere. And I know in my gut that God and I are one. I did not have that when I first came in. I didn't feel like I was one with anybody. I felt unlovable, unacceptable, unworthy. I didn't like myself. But going through the steps in this program, I came to like myself. As I said, there was a lot of garbage that I'd been dragging along with me for a while. And I can't say, I look at the steps and I could go through all of the steps, but I'm not going to do that. I have learned to put the steps into living action, not to work them, not to, I needed to study them. I needed to read them. I needed to understand them. I had people in my life who shared with me that when I had problems with step 3 about turning my will and my life over to the care of God, it's like, well, what is my will and my life? It wasn't tangible. And they said, well, turn your thinking and your actions over to God. And I went, okay, I can do that. I understand that. So people simplified stuff with me because being an intellect, I have a tendency to complicate everything. And the other thing that I really like about the program, I'm sorry, I may just jump around here, is that AA doesn't tell me what kind of God I have to believe in, or what I have to call him. It can be anything. And my mother used to call her God Little Boss. She saw Jesus as Little Boss, and then Big Boss was God. My husband, and he calls himself a recovering Catholic, he sees his God as Gomu, Gomu, which is God of my understanding. And we even have that on our license plate. So it doesn't matter what you call God. It can be anything. And for me, it's just God. It doesn't mean that it's a he or a she. It's just more convenient to mention him as a he. It just works better in my life. Let's see. I've been involved in big book studies the last few years. And I continue to learn so much. I think one of the most wonderful things about the program is that I never stop learning. This is not, and I read it in a story, and I can't tell you what story it was, but it says, I've never read in the big book where it says, okay, you've done all your steps, now you can go live your life. There's no place in there that I've ever seen that it says that. And my experience after 59 years says that I don't ever get to stop. This is something that I go on forever and ever. And my home group is a book study, and they call it a book study. I don't call it a book study. It's we read the books and then we talk about them. But a study for me is if I want to study the book, I go paragraph by paragraph and talk about what it means. And Carol, my dear love friend sponsee, who's online here, suggests that we read the book out loud and in the first person, and that it gives more meaning that way. And I have done that, and it really does work. It's a whole different thing that happens. It's very interesting. Some of the things that I've learned over the years, and now I've read Bill's story. His is in the front. And I've read it for years and did not think it applied to me at all because I'm a high bottom drunk and he was not. But through going to book studies, paragraph by paragraph, I saw some things in there that absolutely stood out to me. On page 1112, at the bottom, he's talking about Ebby, who'd come to see him. It says, I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on different footing. His roots grasped new soil. And now I've got that underlined. I have it highlighted. So that means that I've read it more than once and it was important to me. But the particular time that I went through it a couple of years ago, it became really clear to me that what an inward reorganization means is a psychic change, which is what the doctor's opinion and what's in the back of the book on spiritual experiences and stuff, what it says that I have to have if I want to continue to stay sober. And I see myself every day nowadays when I go to meetings, and I go to a lot of them, not because I'm afraid of drinking, but because I enjoy them. And I learn something new from everybody. It's amazing because people see things differently, so I get to have a psychic change every time I come to a meeting. I get inwardly reorganized every time I hear somebody speak that says something in a way that I've not heard it before, and that's important to me. And just below that is he was talking about, it says, why don't you choose your own conception of God? It says, it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. That was really important for me because all I had to do was believe in a power greater than myself. I didn't have to call it anything. It was real simple. That sentence simplified things for me. And nothing more was required to make my beginning. Like I said, my brain loves to complicate things, so I have a tendency to make things far more complicated than they really are. So I keep reading things, and also it's funny because it's squiggly writing. Now, if anybody that has been to a Joe and Charlie Big Book study, or if you can see them online on YouTube, there's tapes out. But they talk about the squiggly writing as being very important. Anything that is squiggly writing is important. And that's squiggly writing. So they must have, Bill and them who put this together must have thought that was really important. Let's see, what else do I want to say? Okay. Let's see. Yeah, we've learned to fully concede. I'm sorry, my little brain stops. Chapter 5. There was something that I learned just recently. In chapter 5, it says, if you want what we have, I never once asked myself, what is it that I had that someone wants? It never occurred to me to ask that, but the person that was leading this particular book study ask that question. What is it? What do we have that people want? And he went on to say, that it's our spiritual awakening. And it was one of those aha moments for me, wow, I never saw that before. And that's what I love about going to meetings and book studies and stuff, because I get to hear from other people the way they see things, and I learn from that. And there's a story in the back of the book. It's called "It Might Have Been Worse." And it says, study the AA book, don't just read it. And that's what I do. I try to study the book. I still read it. And I can't tell you, it's been thousands of times over the years, because my mother was in the program 5 years before I came into the program. So I even had bits and pieces of the big book back then. So every time I get into this book, I see things differently. And that for me is very necessary. I heard somebody say where was I? I was in New Zealand, I think, at Auckland, New Zealand. And every time he spoke, he would always say, there is no recovery without change. And it occurred to me, the longer I stay sober, that there's no recovery without change, but there's no continued recovery without continued change. And I cannot continue to change if I sit at home by myself. Only way I can continue to change is to stay active in AA, to keep my, what do they call it? Keep it green. When I accepted that I was an alcoholic, I jumped in with both feet, and I've been here ever since. I can't remember ever sitting on my laurels. I can't remember ever being bored. Boredom comes from thinking of self. I have always been inquiring minds. And I remember there's Kahil Gibran, I guess, says something about if you want to know God, don't be a solver of riddles. And of course, I have to ask why. I want to know why. It's something that is part of me. I've learned when I first came in, see what time it is. I had about 4 years in the program, and I was in a meeting in Southern California. I came in Long Beach, California, and they were talking about the 9th step promises. Well, actually, they didn't call them the 9th step promises. They were talking about the promises. And I had 4 years, and I had such an ego that I couldn't ask anybody, where they were. So I sat in that meeting through the whole meeting, listening to people share about this, not knowing where it was. So I had to go home and get the book out and start from the beginning and read. And of course, when I hit 83, I think it is, that's where those are. And I remember reading something about, are these extravagant promises we think not? It's on page 84. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And I remember when I read that, I went, oh, this is where the promises are. So I went back and I reread the promises, the 9th step promises. But up until then, and actually up until who knows when, I always thought that was the only promises in the book. They were the 9 step promises. And when you go to meetings and you go to them, especially in COVID, you go everywhere, that a lot of places say, well, we read the promises. Nobody says, well, they're starting to now. It's becoming more popular to say, will you read the 9th step promises? Because the 10th step has like 14 promises, and they're right next door. The 9th step promises end, and then it says, they will always materialize if we work for them. And then it says, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory, continue to set right the new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living, as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. And then it goes through the steps. Step 10 has all the steps involved in it. So when I'm doing step 10, I'm actually doing all the steps. I heard for so many years that, steps 10, 11, and 12 were the maintenance steps. But I have to tell you that when I first went through the steps, if I hit step 10 my first time and I had to maintain what I had then, I wouldn't have grown very much at all. You know, the 10, 11, and 12 are not the maintenance steps, they're the growing steps. And it tells you that. It says that we have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And this will last a lifetime. You know, it doesn't say we're done with the steps, go live your life. This will last a lifetime. We have to keep doing this over and over again. And something my husband said not too long ago, he's in Al-Anon, he's not an alcoholic. He said the sun doesn't set on the 12 steps. You know, it's a continuing way of life or designed for living, as it says in the book. You know, it goes on and forever. So we have our 10th step promises on page 84 and 85, and I like to look at them as the promises of hope, because all the promises are promises of hope, but step 10 focuses on the drinking part. Step 9 focuses on things that happen as we continue to stay sober. Step 10 talks about, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. That's our first promise of step 10. We don't have to fight alcohol anymore. For by this time, sanity will have returned. And for me, that's really important, because when I first got sober, I wanted to know what step 2 was all about. And that step 2 actually is a promise. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I always questioned my sanity. Well, I didn't think I was crazy. Of course, I could see that my thinking was crazy, that I, would turn to drink, but I didn't see myself as being what I called insane. And here it says the sanity will have returned. And now I understand that the sanity step 2 was talking about was that when life sucks, I don't think about drinking. And sanity has returned to me, because when life sucks, and it does, even at 59 years of sobriety, life can suck. Not as long, because I don't hang on to stuff as long, but sanity has returned because I don't look to drink over whatever's going on. I talk to somebody, I write about it, I share about it, but drinking is far from my mind. And then it goes on. I mean, there's as I said, there's 14 of them. And one of the interesting ones for me, it says, we are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And for me, that's important, because if I'm afraid of getting drunk, that means that I haven't worked the steps. These promises haven't come true in my life. That means that I'm lacking somewhere, and I need to go back and redo it, because it says we are neither cocky nor are we afraid. Today, I'm not afraid of drinking. I go to meetings. I do what's in front of me to do. I work with people. I stay sober. So sobriety has to remain a priority, and it is a priority in my life. It was a priority when I first got sober. It's still a priority today. I don't have to consciously, grit my teeth and hang on to my whatever. But it is a priority, and it has to stay that way. And I heard somebody say at the meeting I went to this morning, I can't forget where I came from. And I used to hear that all the time when I got sober early on. What is it? Let's see, lest we forget to remember, we're condemned to relive again. People used to say that all the time. There's a lot of things that people used to say when I first got sober that I don't hear anymore. But I still remember my last drunk. I remember how it feels. I remember what I did. I remember my last drink. I was on slow gin, and it's yeah, my last drunk was on slow gin. My last drink was on hard liquor, and hard liquor is not something that I drank regularly, but slow gin, I remember so well my last drunk, because I had finished the pint, and I remember sitting there saying to myself, okay, you're feeling a buzz on. Yeah, you should probably stop. This is what, most people do. But did I? No, I went out and got another bottle. And what occurred to me when I decided that I was an alcoholic is that normal people don't sit there and think about things like that. They don't say, oh, well, maybe I should stop now. They just stop, but I didn't. So I have to never forget where I came from. The thing that I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is that it's not religious, it's a spiritual program. It's a spiritual way of life. Um, it's just, I get so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. After 59 years, I still have quiet time with God. I am still improving my conscious contact. There is never a time when I've got that down. It's like, okay, I don't have to say good morning to God anymore. I don't have to have quiet time. I don't have to read any more books because I've got it. No, I ain't got it. I have to continue to improve my conscious contact with God. And I do that by showing up at meetings. I do that by reading spiritual books. I have continued to find spiritual teachers in book form and read how they got to where they are. And if it fits, I use it. That's part of the program. That's part of what keeps me alive, what keeps me excited about AA and studying the book, going to book studies, that keeps me alive too, because I have to keep learning. And I've said it before. I am in service continuously. I don't go around speaking as much as Carol does. I used to during COVID, but I'm still, I just took on treasurer for my home group. That's a 2-year commitment. Oh my God, I'm committed for 2 years to go to that meeting and do what I need to do. My very first service job was cleaning ashtrays and coffee cups, because when I got sober, we drank and we drank coffee and we smoked. Everybody smoked. So there was always ashtrays and coffee cups. And to tell you the truth, I never drank coffee till I came to AA. I learned to drink coffee in AA. But that was my first service job. And then my next one was making coffee, and for somebody who didn't drink coffee, I had to learn how to make it. So there's all different kinds of ways of being in service, and I'm still in service today. I have to be that way. I work with others, I'm always going through the big book and the 12 and 12, and I'm always learning. I have sponsees. My husband and I were talking not too long ago about the service work I do. And I discovered when I was sharing with him that the carrot that I get, out of all that I do is that I'm happy, joyous, and free in all areas of my life. My life is drama-free today, for the most part. And if there's any drama in it, it's because I've created it. And one last thing I want to say, step 10, Carol's heard me say it time and time again. Step 10, the spiritual axiom is my tool, is my favorite tool. And I think she was the one that talked about the tool belt, but instead of a toolbox. I always carried a toolbox, but either she did or somebody did. It was one of those things that I picked up. So now I carry a tool belt, which means that I have it on me. The toolbox I could throw under the couch if I didn't want to use it, but the tool belt is on me. And so I have the tools readily acceptable, or available is what I wanted to say. And step 10, whenever I'm disturbed, no matter what the cause, the book does say there's something wrong with me. I've changed that to say I need to look at me. Whenever I'm disturbed, no matter what the cause, I need to look at me. This has been the most important tool in my life, along with having a higher power, because it got me out of the victimhood that I was in. Up until I really started looking at the step 10 axiom, I was always the victim, and it was always your fault. And if you would change, I would be better. Today, I know that I am responsible for what I think, what I say, what I do, how I act. I can't blame anything on anybody else. When I react to something you say or do, it's my reaction, and I have to look at it. If you push a button, I have to look at that button. Where did that come from? Why is that being pushed? Who do you remind me of? What's going on here? And generally, when I start writing about stuff like that, I go back into the past and I find some person, place, or thing that I had not forgiven and that I need to forgive. And I know that I have forgiven when I no longer react. React comes from the ego, response comes from the heart. And the program has taught me how to respond to life instead of react to life. And when I'm putting the step 10 axiom tool to work in my life, I respond more than I react. And I'm really grateful for that. I mean, I spent years saying, if you would change, I'll be better. And that's not how the program works. I have to change so I can be better. And I keep coming back because, hey, there's still more to learn. I'm not dead yet. I probably won't be dead for, I hope, for at least another 25 years. That would put me over 100. And who knows, maybe I could live even longer than that. But as long as I am in this body form here, I will be an Alcoholics Anonymous because it has given me life. It has given me the tools I need to live happy, joyous, and free. It has given me a God that I'm going to say I understand my God. I hear people say I don't understand God. I understand my God. My God loves me, accepts me. And in the book, I disagree with there are a few things I disagree with, but one of the things I disagree with in chapter 5, it says, we have to stop playing God. And for me, that means that when Bill wrote that, he must have thought that God was a manipulating, controlling kind of God. For me, if I were to play God, I would be loving and accepting everybody. And I'd like to play God. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I still judge. I still make decisions based on self. I would like to play God and love and accept everybody. So I still have a lot of work to do, and that's why I keep coming back. And I think I've run out of steam, Glenn, so I'm going to bring that to a close. And if anybody wants to talk about anything for the next few minutes, you can talk about what's the greatest tool you use in your program. Thanks for asking me.